In 1986, a first-time director created a whole film around one line of dialogue: "Thrill me." He opened it with an alien escape pod crashing to Earth at the same time an axe-wielding slasher was out and about. And all this happens even before the title card appears. He hired a nobody special effects crew that went on to found one of the greatest makeup studios ever. And then right before the movie was released, the studio panicked and changed the entire ending. An ending with such a great twist that the director has just wanted all the audience to see for decades. That movie is Night of the Creeps. And stick around, because in the back half of this video, I'm going to explain to you what the studio cut and why that cut ending actually turns out to be a better movie. Released on August 22nd, 1986, Night of the Creeps follows Chris Romero and his best friend JC, two fraternity pledges who steal a corpse from a campus research lab as a hazing prank and accidentally thaw out a man infected by alien parasites from 1959. As slug-like creatures spread across a college campus, turning students into zombies, only Chris, his crush Cynthia, and a hard-boiled, deeply haunted detective named Ray Cameron stand in the way. Written and directed by Fred Decker in his feature debut, the film opened in just 70 theaters and made back barely a tenth of its budget. It's now considered one of the great cult horror comedies of the decade. A film stuffed with in-jokes, practical slime, and one of the most quotable detectives in horror history. Here are 12 things you didn't know about Night of the Creeps, including the ending the studio didn't want anyone to see. One, Night of the Creeps opens in black and white in 1959. Aboard an alien spacecraft, two extraterrestrials fight to stop a canister of experimental parasites from being released. A third, seemingly possessed crew member shoots it out of an airlock anyway. The canister crash lands to Earth in the exact same stretch of woods where a college couple has parked to watch for falling stars, and where at the same moment an escaped axe-wielding patient from the local mental hospital happens to be loose. Before the title card has even appeared, the movie stacks two subgenres on top of each other: a 1950s alien invasion B-movie and a slasher in the woods that both collide exactly at the same time. That's an insanely confident way to open your directorial debut. Most horror films pick one threat and build the whole runtime around it. Night of the Creeps opens with two, shot in stark black and white to evoke that era, that homage to drive-in movies it's paying tribute to. And here's the part worth remembering. The axe murderer isn't just an opening scare. He comes back. Keep him in your head, because by the end of this video, he's the whole reason the entire film's emotional core exists. 2. 27 years after the prologue, Chris Romero and his friend JC are pledging a fraternity at Corman University. Their hazing assignment is simple: steal a corpse and leave it on a sorority doorstep. They break into a campus cryogenics lab and find something better than they bargained for: the frozen body of the fraternity member infected back in 1959. They steal it. It thaws in the lab, and the alien slugs still living inside it wake up and start spreading across campus. This might be the flimsiest justification for an apocalypse in a 1980s horror movie, but that's exactly the point. The entire outbreak that follows, zombies, exploding heads, a burning sorority house, traces back to two guys trying to impress a girl. And one of those guys, JC, let me talk about him. He's the unsung hero of this movie. JC is handicapped. He's Chris's best buddy. He doesn't get the girls, but he does everything he can to help his buddy get the girl of his dreams. And then sadly, he's attacked and he gets infected. And before sacrificing himself, he leaves Chris a love letter, a recording, explaining the weakness of the slugs, that their weakness is fire. And then JC sacrifices himself. And it's so sad when Chris discovers his body slumped on the ground, right next to his crutches and right next to the dorm furnace. It's all thanks to JC for figuring out the weakness of the alien slugs. And later in this video, I'll explain how this sacrifice for the many comes to fruition in another way and in another character. 3. The college itself is called Corman University after B-movie king Roger Corman. Chris's last name is Romero after George A. Romero. His best friend JC's full name is James Carpenter Hooper, literally combining John Carpenter and Toby Hooper into one hyphenated surname. Chris's crush is Cynthia Cronenberg after David Cronenberg. Detective Ray Cameron is named for James Cameron. His partner is Detective Landis after John Landis, and other officers are named Raimi, Miner, Craven, and Bava after Sam Raimi, Steve Miner, Wes Craven, and Mario Bava. This isn't a couple of Easter eggs, it's the entire cast list. Nearly every named character in this movie is carrying around a horror director's name as like they're wearing a costume. That's Decker telling you exactly what kind of movie this is going to be, even before a single joke lands. A love letter built out of the whole genre's family tree. It works because it never explains itself on screen. If you don't catch it, the names just sound normal. And if you do catch it, the whole movie turns into a giant scavenger hunt. That's a really cool way of rewarding repetitive viewing, decades before Easter eggs were a marketing ploy. Or, according to Fred Decker, the very first thing that existed for Night of the Creeps wasn't a plot, a character, or a monster. It was the line, "Thrill me." Everything else in the script was built outward from that single phrase, which becomes Detective Cameron's running dare throughout the film, a challenge tossed at whatever horror is about to happen next. Think about what that means structurally. A whole 88-minute alien zombie slasher movie grew out of two words. Thrill Me works because it's a dare that aims at two directions at once. One direction inside the movie towards whatever Cameron is facing, and two, from the audience itself, asking the movie to thrill us, thrill me. Most screenwriters start with a great plot and hope that a couple good one-liners come out of it. Decker did the opposite. He flipped it. He started with the one-liner and developed the entire plot from there. Five. The film's creature and makeup effects were designed by David B. Miller, who'd already worked on the original Nightmare on Elm Street. Working under him were Howard Berger, fresh off the zombie crew of Day of the Dead, and Robert Kurtzman. All three even played background zombies in the film. 2 years later, Kurtzman and Berger co-founded K&B EFX Group, the studio that would go on to create effects for Kill Bill, The Walking Dead, and hundreds of other productions. This is one of those details that reframes the entire movie once you know it. The slime-covered creature crew slogging through this low-budget campus horror film in 1986. Well, within 2 years, they would end up building one of the most influential practical effects studio in horror industry. Low-budget genre films have always been an incubator for Hollywood talent that Hollywood hasn't recognized yet, and Night of the Creeps is the perfect snapshot for that. Future legends learning their craft on rubber slugs and zombie extras before anyone knew their name. 6. The alien slugs that race across floors and leap at victims throughout the film were entirely practical. Rubber and latex puppets driven by hidden cables and pneumatic rigs. Built by an effects team that also included an animation effects supervisor dedicated specifically to making the creatures move convincingly. There was no digital compositing available to fake the slither. Every shot of a creep on the move had to work in camera. This is why the slugs still hold up 40 years later. There's a tactile wrongness to a physical object being yanked or shoved or pushed across the floor that CGI can just not replicate. You're watching something that actually has weight and has to obey the laws of physics. The bathroom slug attack on JC looks real because the slime is real, the puppets are real. That exploded janitor's head on the floor looks real. That's a completely type of dread than trying to react to a little tennis ball on a green screen. 7. Before Night of the Creeps, Fred Decker conceived the original idea behind the horror comedy House, released the same year. But the studio hired Steve Miner to direct it and Ethan Wiley to write the final screenplay from Decker's premise, leaving Decker off the project entirely. TriStar instead let him write and direct Night of the Creeps as his own feature debut. There's something almost poetic about being bumped off of one horror comedy and landing your directorial debut on a different one all in the same calendar year. Decker didn't get bitter over it. He channeled it. Night of the Creeps became his movie where he controlled everything, wrote every reference himself, and built a film so specifically his, even the janitor is named after a director. Losing house is why Corman University exists at all. Sometimes the project that gets away from you actually opens the runway for one that actually belongs to you. 8. With a modest budget and a tight shooting schedule running from February to April of 1986, much of Night of the Creeps was filmed on sets constructed inside a converted, gutted out former department store, repurposed into a makeshift soundstage for the dorm hallways, lab interiors, and other campus locations. This is peak 80s scrappy filmmaking. There's no studio backlot college campus here. The production carved a fraternity house, a sorority basement, and a research lab out of like an old JCPenney or Sears. You'd never guess it watching the film. That's a testament to the production design team, who stretched a limited budget into something that reads as real, a real sprawling campus. Nine. By 1986, Tom Atkins already had Halloween 3, The Fog, and Escape from New York on his resume. But in interviews and at fan reunions since, Atkins has repeatedly named Detective Ray Cameron as his favorite role of his career, crediting Decker with writing him more quotable lines than any other part he ever played. From Thrill Me to It's Miller Time. I love his one-liners, thrill me, and especially when he says it's Miller time. That was pretty crazy and pretty funny. After first seeing Atkins on The Fog, I never expected him to play a character like Cameron. I especially love the scene where he goes to talk to the armory in the police department and asks with a complete straight face, "I need a flamethrower." And he's so serious about it. Underneath the one-liners, Decker gave Atkins a character carrying real weight, and that weight is about to matter a lot more. 10. Detective Cameron's haunted, self-destructive streak isn't just a hard-boiled cop cliche, it's personal. Flashbacks throughout the film, shot in the same black and white style as the prologue, revealed that Cameron lost his old girlfriend on that same night in 1959. Killed by the same escaped mental patient loose in the woods when the alien canister crash landed. This is the connective tissue that makes the whole structure of the film connect and fit in place. That black and white cold open in Fact 1 wasn't just world building. It was quietly setting the backstory for the detective who's going to carry the movie through the whole second half of the movie. When the slugs resurface 27 years later, Cameron isn't just fighting a zombie outbreak. He's watching the worst night of his life come back from the dead, literally. That's why his arc lands more than just comic relief. And that emotional weight is exactly what makes what happens to him next hit so hard. 11. In Decker's original ending, Cameron sacrifices himself blowing up the slug-infested sorority basement. But his infected corpse gets back up as a zombie, walks out of the burning house, and collapses in front of a cemetery as the creeps pour out of his body towards the graves. The alien spacecraft from the prologue then arrives, sweeping the graveyard with spotlights, searching. After a disastrous test screening shown to audiences before the effects were finished, the studio panicked and ordered a shorter replacement ending. The infected dog from earlier in the film returns, and a slug leaps from its mouth into Cynthia's mouth as she and Chris kiss, watching the house burn. For years, Decker's original ending only survived as a rumored deleted scene, until it was finally restored on Blu-ray as the director's cut, which I recently watched on Amazon Prime. And I agree, this ending was much better. This is the reveal I promised you at the start of this video, and it completely changes how you think about this movie. I hadn't watched the original for decades, and when I recently watched this on Amazon Prime, I absolutely loved it. The ending was so new to me, but I love the dread that it ends you with. Have any of you seen Night of the Living Dead Part 3? Remember at the end where they drop the bomb on the town and all that smoke rises up into the air, into the clouds, and then the rain comes down with the poison gas, making the whole cycle start over again? That's the same type of dread this movie left me with. When you see the alien slugs making a break towards that cemetery, you know they're going to reanimate all those bodies. At least you got the hope of the alien spacecraft searching for them. But anyways, I love the director's cut ending much better than the original. 12. Night of the Creeps opened in just 70 theaters and grossed roughly $591,000 domestically, against a reported budget of around $5 million. A commercial flop by any measure. It slowly found its audience on VHS through the following years, eventually earning a full collector's edition Blu-ray from Scream Factory, complete with a documentary literally titled Thrill Me: The Making of Night of the Creeps. Box office numbers measured this film as a failure the week it opened, but they completely missed what it actually was: a genre encyclopedia disguised as a hangout movie, patient enough to reward that repetitive, obsessive rewatch culture that VHS rentals built. Every detail we covered in this video, the Thrill Me line, the 2 different endings, is the kind of thing you only notice on your 5th or 6th watch. That's not a flop. That's a movie built for the long game, and it won. Night of the Creeps made less than $600,000 in 1986. It should have disappeared. Instead, it became one of the most quoted cult horror comedies of the decade. A movie where the janitor is named after a director, and the hero's love interest is named after another director. And the most famous line of the movie came before the plot did. But the thing that stuck with me the most going into this video wasn't the jokes. It was that ending that most people have probably never seen. A studio got panicked over their own ending and decided to secretly replace it with another. And for years, the real one just sat there. So here's my question: theatrical ending or the director's cut? Which do you prefer? Which one is the real Night of the Creeps? Drop your answers in the comments. I read every one. Next week, I'm covering another cult classic, and I take requests and suggestions. So if you have any, drop them in the comments. Hit subscribe if you don't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and remember, thrill me.